So tonight, Matthew, I shall be. Tonight we're going to be working on hips. So just getting a bit of mobility in the hips, quite a gentle class because it's such a hot evening. So quite chilled. If you're really lucky, I might even throw in a couple of restorative poses, who knows. So let's just start with some breath. So start by putting both hands on the belly. And as we inhale and the lungs expand, really think about that then pushing the breath and expanding the belly. So as we exhale, we relax everything down again, the ribs come towards one another. And then as we inhale, really expand the lungs to push that belly into your hands. As you exhale, let everything relax. And then inhale, really expand those lungs until the belly is forced outwards. Three more breaths like this. Inhaling to really expand the lungs and expand that belly into the hands. And then exhaling to soften. Inhaling to expand. And then exhaling to soften. Last one, really deep, long inhale. And then exhale to soften. Then releasing the hands from the belly, bring them to the sides of the ribs. So this time as we inhale, really think about expanding the lungs out to the side so that you're expanding the air into your hands. And then as you exhale, the ribs sink back down. Inhaling, really expanding into those hands. And then exhaling, let the ribs come back towards one another. Inhaling to expand. And then exhaling, relax. Three more like this. And releasing the hands from the ribs, just bring them so the fingers rest on the collarbones and the palms are on the top of the chest. So this time as we expand the breath, think about expanding those lungs so that the belly is forced outwards, the ribs are forced out side to side, and yet the shoulders remain relaxed. So inhaling into the chest, expanding into the belly, expanding into the ribs. And then exhale, let that breath go and let everything soften. So inhaling to expand. Chest, belly, ribs go out to the sides. Exhale, release and relax everything. Inhale, really expand the lungs. Expand the belly. Expand the ribs. Then exhale, soften the chest, soften the ribs, pull the belly in. Three more like this in your own time. Really think about expanding the lungs front to back, side to side. Then just let the breath come to normal. Rolling the hips over onto your side, bring the feet out to the side. And then taking the left hand towards the floor, Inhale the other arm up and lift the hips. So a really good stretch down the whole of the right side of the body. Couple of breaths here. Then bring the arm back down as you sink the hips. Bring the legs around to your other side, taking the right hand down to the floor. One foot is in front of the other. And as you take a nice big inhale, sweep the left arm round and open up the hips, really stretching through the side body. Couple of breaths here. Then sweeping that arm back down, bring the hips back down. This time, bring the right leg so that the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. And then with the left leg, make the shin parallel towards the end of the mat. And then try and get into a comfortable sitting position where both of your sit bones are on the floor. It doesn't matter how high your knee is off the floor, and if you need to raise the other knee too as well, that doesn't matter. If you find it more comfortable to put a cushion or a block underneath, you can do that. So sitting up nice and tall, the first thing we'll do is lean the body forward over the front leg as far as you can so that you're comfortable. But depending on your hips, and we're all different here, and also depending on our legs, you'll probably feel a stretch in a different place than everybody else on the call. Just enjoy the stretch and have a few breaths here. Then walking the hands back up, come back to seated, turn the torso so that you're on the diagonal, and then reach the hands forward and lean forward again as much as you can. So this time, really stretching the chest forward, trying to keep both the sit bones on the floor. And just notice how that changes the stretch. And then walking those hands back up again, so then we come back up to seated. This time, turn your body away from your legs as far as is comfortable, keeping both sit bones on the floor. Then walk those hands forward until you feel a stretch. Really concentrating on trying to keep that left sit bone down on the mat. And again, just notice where that stretches in your body, because it will be different for all of us. One more breath here. And then walk those hands back up. Bring the body to center. Maybe take the hands behind you. And then switch the legs around. So the left leg is coming so the shin is parallel to the side of the mat. The front of the mat. And the right leg is now parallel to the end of the mat. And then adjust your bum so that you can sit down on both sit bones. If you need to bring the back knee forwards in order to make that more comfortable for your hips, then you can. So just play around with what's most comfortable. And then we'll do those 3 stretches again. So start by sitting up really, really tall, really sitting on the sit bones, and then walk those hands forward as far as is comfortable. Really grounding down through those sit bones. If you feel you want to curl the spine over and drop the head, you can. If you feel like if you stretch your chest forward and you keep the back long, that gives you more of a stretch, then do whatever suits your practice this evening and whatever feels good in your body. Then walking those hands back up so that you're seated. Turn your body to the 45 degrees so that you're diagonal towards your legs. And then again, walk those hands forward, keeping both sit bones really, really glued down onto the floor. Just enjoy the stretch in that direction. Again, either keeping the back long or curving through the spine, whichever feels best for your practice this evening. One more breath here. And then gently walk your hands back up. Turn the body away from your legs. And the last stretch on this side, walk the hands forward. This time really thinking about keeping that right sit bone on the mat. So really ground down through the sit bones and get the stretch coming from the waist and the hips. One side will be different to the other. But just notice where you're at from one side to the other. One more breath here. And then walking the hands back up. This time we'll swivel around until we come into a tabletop position. So any pain in the knees, you can always put a cushion underneath the knees or fold the yoga mat over. And just have the wrists slightly forward of the shoulders so that you have a bit of space in the shoulders. It's up to you whether you have your toes tucked or your feet flat. Depending on the construction of your knees, you'll find one more comfortable than the other. And to start with, we'll circle through the hips. So really getting the movement to come from your tailbone, your hips, as opposed to the middle of the body where we normally move. Really trying to keep the shoulders as still as possible and just circle through those hips. And then take those circles in the other direction. Like imagining you've got a tail like a dog and you're trying to make a circle with it. And then bringing the hips to stillness, take those circles to the middle back. So just warming up through the whole spine. Really circling the spine around. So it goes out to the side, down, the other side, and then up. Really trying to get the movement coming from the middle of the back. And then take those circles in the other direction. And then bringing the spine back to stillness. Have some little circles through your shoulders, maybe one shoulder and then the other shoulder. Just getting the entire spine to move. We started with the base, then we moved to the middle, and now we're working in the upper back. And then maybe circle those shoulders in the other direction. And then once you've circled both shoulders in both directions, come back to a neutral spine. Really ground down through the fingers. So take the fingertips really wide. Ground down through the left kneecap. And then we'll take the right leg out behind us. Bend at the knee so that we have one leg up towards the ceiling. And we'll do circles with that hip. So 3 circles in one direction, trying to keep the rest of the body as still as possible. So really slow circles, keeping the pelvis as still as possible. And then once you've done your 3 in one direction, take it in the other direction. Again, trying to keep everything else as still as possible. all of that movement is coming from the hip. And then put the knee back down on the mat, and we'll move to the other side. So ground down through the right knee this time, take the left leg out behind you, bend at the knee, and then do 3 circles. Nice and slowly. And then once you've finished those 3 circles completely, bring the knee back in and take them in the other direction. Again, trying to keep the pelvis and the back and everything else as still as possible. Then bring the knee back down to the mat. This time, keeping the leg in the same position as it is on the floor, we'll do some fire hydrants. So just lifting the knee out to the side and then back down again. Out to the side, back down again. Out to the side, back down again. 3 more. Out to the side and back down. Out to the side, back down. Out to the side and back down. Then we'll do 6 on the other side. So realign yourself, press the floor away with the hands, engage the shoulders, and then left leg out to the side, knees together. Out to the side, then back down, out to the side, and back down. 3 more. 2 and 1. Good. Last exercise in this series. So we take the leg out to the back, we're starting with the right. We then bring the knee to side into a cactus leg at the side. We then try and straighten the leg. We bend at the knee, we take it back out. We'll do 2 more of those on this side. So bring the knee out to the side like a cactus, straighten the leg, bend the knee, take it to the back. Bring it to the side, straighten the leg, bend the knee, take it back. Put the knee back down again, and then we'll do the other side. So take the leg out to the back, bend the knee into cactus, straighten the leg, bend the knee, take it back out. Take it out the back, bend the knee, straighten the leg, bend the knee, take the leg back. Last one, knee to the side, long leg, bend the knee to the back, foot down. Then take the knees wide, toes together, and let the hips rest back on the heels into child's pose. Bringing the head to the mat, and have 3 really deep breaths in this pose. Good. Then bring the head up, bring the body up so the weight comes back over the wrists. Tuck the toes and push up into our first downward facing dog. So to start with, bent legs, really press the hands into the mat, fingers are wide. Stretch the chest towards your thighs, making sure there's a long line of energy from your wrists all the way up to your sit bones. Then pad one heel down to the floor, followed by the other heel. Really stretching out down the backs of the hamstrings and the calves. And then when you've done both sides equally, ground down through the right foot and raise the left leg up into the air. Bend at the knee, open the hip, and really try and stretch those toes over the back towards the right shoulder. Doesn't matter whether the standing foot's on the floor or on your toes or your knees bent, whatever's most comfortable, but really stretch the upper leg over the back. And then we'll level the hips out again and do 3 circles in one direction, trying to keep the rest of the body and the pelvis as still as possible. So quite slow circles. And then we'll take those circles in the other direction. And then when you've done 3 circles in each direction, bring that foot forwards and place it between the hands, giving it a little extra tug if it needs, and drop the back knee down to the mat. So keeping this foot at the front, we will roll onto the outside of that foot so that the leg wings out. So if I do it in this direction, I roll onto my foot so that my knee can wing out to the side. You can't see my foot there, but it's basically like that on its side. Good. So keeping the right hand down on the mat, we give the knee a little press with the left hand and have a play with where your hips are. You'll probably have more movement if your hips are further forwards than if your hips are back, you're more restricted. So have a play as to where works best for you to get that stretch. If you need even more of a stretch, you can raise your back knee in this position too. But if you want to keep the knee on the ground, that's absolutely fine. It's the same stretch. Then bringing both hands to the inside of the foot, just step that foot out to the side slightly. Your whole foot is now on the ground, and we sink our hips down. So this is dragon pose. So you can either stay on your hands, your back knee can be down, or it can be up. It's entirely up to you. And depending on your flexibility, you might be able to get your torso lower to the ground. You might even be able to get an elbow down, maybe even 2 if you're really lucky. It's quite warm today, so we might be a bit looser than normal. But keep the back as long as you can. You want to try and be stretched. And then just have a bounce into the hips. But then really squeeze your muscles so you're keeping the body safe. We're not just sinking into the end of our range of movement even. Excellent. Then ground down onto the back knee if you haven't already. Come back up onto your hands if you're down on your elbows. And then take this front foot back to meet the other one. Bring the hands back so that they're underneath the shoulders. Tuck the toes and push back up into downward dog, and we'll do the other side. So get comfortable in your downward dog, taking the chest through towards your thighs. Then raise the right leg up towards the ceiling. Bend at the knee, open the hip, and get a good stretch through the deep core muscles. So stretching those toes over the back, trying to tickle the back of the left shoulder blade with your toes. Really opening up through the body, pressing the ground away. And then 3 circles into that hip. So start off by leveling out the hips, and then 3 circles, trying to keep the rest of the body as still as possible. And then take those circles in the other direction for 3. And then we'll bring that foot all the way forward, giving an extra little tug if it needs. Coming down onto the back knee, either keeping the toes tucked or untucked, whatever's more comfortable in your knee. Roll onto the outside edge of the back foot, sinking the hips forward, and then pressing out on that front knee. Good. Couple of breaths here. Again, play with how far forward your hips are versus how far back they are. See how that changes your range of motion and where is most comfortable for you. And then bringing both hands to the mat, heel toe that foot out to the side. Ground down through that foot so the whole foot is on the mat this time, and we'll move into dragon pose. So again, make the back as long as possible. Sink the hips forward, either staying on the ground, on the back knee, or you can lift the knee up off the mat, whatever is more comfortable. And then if you can bring one elbow down, maybe two, then go for it. But just notice one side might be different to the other. You might be able to get deeper into this pose on one side than the other. If you need to keep the knee down, keep the knee down. It's your practice, so make it your own. Good. 2 more breaths here. Really squeezing the muscles. Make sure you're keeping the body safe. We're not just sinking into our end of motion, the range of motion. Then bringing that back knee to the ground, coming back up onto your hands if you haven't already. Lift up that back knee and then step the front foot back into downward facing dog. Maybe realign the hands if you need to. Stretching that chest through towards the thighs, bending the knees a lot, really elongating the spine. And then tiptoe those toes forward, all the way to the top of the mat, bending the knees as much as you need, and coming up onto the fingertips if you need. Bend the legs a lot. Allow the upper body to hang over the legs. Allow the shoulder blades to spread apart from one another. Allow the head to be heavy. Maybe nod the head a couple of times. Maybe shake the head a couple of times. Nice big inhale here. Nice big exhale. And then very, very slowly, gradually roll yourself all the way up, coming up to standing. Good. 3 deep breaths here. Doing it in a block breath style. So inhale the arms up to the front for 4. Hold the breath in at the top for a count of 4. Exhale the arms out to the sides for the count of 4. Then hold the breath out at the bottom for another count of 4. So in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 3 more. In, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Last one. In, hold, out, hold. Then inhale the arms up. Exhale, folding forward, bending at the knees, coming down into a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, long back, long neck. Exhale, folding forwards. Take the left leg towards the back of the mat. Either stay on the toes or drop the heel, whatever you feel most stable doing. Pull the inner thighs towards one another. And then inhale up into crescent lunge. Really dropping the hips down towards the mat. Lengthening out through the back leg. opening up through the chest, maybe starting to feel a stretch into the left hip flexor. Then bring your right hand to your right hip and reach over your head with your left hand, pulling the inner thighs towards one another to give you balance and feeling the stretch down the left side of the body. Couple of breaths here. And coming back up to center, take the other arm up to the top. Nice big inhale, then exhale, float the hands down to the floor. Step the front foot back to plank. Bring the knees down towards the floor, and then bend the elbows and take the chest and the chin to the floor, and then scoop forwards into cobra. In your cobra, enjoy the lengthening of the hip flexors, really thinking about the front side of the body and lengthening and elongating all those muscles. Pulling the chest forward, relaxing the shoulder blades down the back. Then exhale back down to the mat, tuck the toes, and push the hips back towards the heels, and then up into downward facing dog. A couple of breaths here, really lengthening through the spine, honouring its natural curves. And gradually stretching and straightening the legs, but it's more important to have a long spine. Then float the left leg up behind you, bringing it forwards, dropping that foot down between the front hands. This time, coming onto the back heel, so we're coming into warrior two legs. Nice bend in the front knee, pull the core in, and windmill up to warrior two. So, really, really long back leg. Then we'll drop our hands behind our back, interlace the fingers, and then lengthen the arms to open through the chest. Keeping the legs in exactly the same position. Move from the hips as you fold forwards into humble warrior, letting the hands come over, stretching through the shoulders, really compressing that front hip whilst the back hip opens. Couple of breaths here. Then use the breath and the tightening of your core to lift the body back up, keeping those legs still. Release the hands, taking the arms back out to warrior two. Really big inhale, gazing over the front fingers, and then exhale, windmill the hands down to frame the front foot, turning on the toes of the back foot, step forwards into forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, really long back. And then exhale, fold forward. Inhale, coming all the way up to the top. Exhale, hands to heart center. 3 deep breaths. Inhale, arms out. Exhale, hands down through heart center. Inhale, arms out. Exhale, down through heart center. Inhale, arms out. Exhale, hands down through heart center. Inhale, arms up. This time, fold forward as you exhale. Inhale, halfway lift, long back, long neck. Exhale, folding forward. This time, take the right toes back. Either stay on the toes or drop the heel, it's up to you. Pull the inner thighs towards one another and inhale up into crescent lunge. Then sink the hips down towards the mat, lengthen out through the back leg and open the chest to feel the stretch, this time into the right hip flexor. On this side, take the left hand to the hip. Really get comfortable in the pose before you move anywhere. Take a nice big inhale and then reach the right hand over the top of the head. Really stretching out through the fingertips so you have a stretch down the right side of the body. Couple of breaths here. Then coming back up to center, bring the left arm back up to meet the other one. Inhale, stretch up through the fingers. Exhale, folding forwards, hands come down to frame the front foot. Step back to plank. This time, bend the knees. The knees come down onto the floor. Bend the elbows so the chest and the chin can come down to the floor. And then scoop yourself forward into cobra. Really trying to lengthen down the front of the body. Relaxing the shoulders, stretching out those hip flexors. Pressing the toes into the mat so the legs are engaged. Exhale, coming back down to the mat. Tuck the toes. Take the hips back and up into your downward facing dog. Couple of breaths here. Really stretching that chest through towards the thighs. Then floating the right leg up this time. Bring it forwards in between the hands, giving it a tug if you need. Drop the back heel down into warrior two legs. And then windmill the arms up into warrior two. Get your legs really strong, pressing down into the mat with your feet. Really long through the back leg and a nice bend in the front leg. Then drop the hands down, interlace the fingers, and stretch the arms away from you, opening through the chest. Nice big inhale here. And then exhale, fold forward into humble warrior. Feeling that compression in the front hip as the back hip opens, stretching those hands over towards your head, lengthening through the upper body. One more breath here. Then use your core strength to bring you back up again. Release the hands and come back into your warrior two pose. Nice big inhale as you stretch through the fingertips. And then exhale, windmill the hands to frame the front foot. Spin onto the back toes. Step the back foot forwards. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Bend the knees a lot and inhale all the way up to the top. And then exhale, bring your hands back to heart center. Excellent stuff. Okay, we'll do a restorative pose now. So I'm going to give you a choice. Both are poses to do with the hips. One is reclined butterfly, which is a completely relaxing pose. The other one is not quite so passive. So if you're doing reclined butterfly, you bring the soles of the feet towards one another. You allow the legs to be completely relaxed out to the side. You're bringing your feet closer to your pelvis than we normally would. So maybe just one hand's worth between your heels and your pelvis. And then rolling yourself back down onto the mat and completely relax and release in reclined butterfly. So this is a real passive stretch for the hip flexors. It's really opening the hips out to the side. But depending on your hips, that might really not be very comfortable for you. It might be absolutely lovely. We all have different hips. So your other option, if you want a more active stretch, is to do frog pose. So frog pose, you start on your knees and you take your knees as wide as you can. You then turn your feet out to the side. Your shins should be in line with the ends of your yoga mat. And then you sink the hips back, coming down onto the elbows. So this is much more of a stretch for the inner hip. So where the inside of the inner thighs, the ligaments join into the pelvis. Whereas the first stretch was more of a stretch for the outer or upper hip, I should say, on the front of the body. So whichever one you've chosen, we'll take 10 deep breaths in this pose. And feel free to maneuver yourself if you need to. If you become uncomfortable, then have a wiggle in the pose. If you feel as you go deeper into your breath that you can go deeper into the pose, then feel free to do that too. So 10 deep breaths. Your unique breaths. I'm not going to count you, so you just take your deep breaths as you can. Then when you've done your 10 deep breaths, come out of your pose very, very gently, using the parts of your body that you need to ease yourself back to seated. And then again, the next pose, we're going to hold for 10 deep breaths, and I'll also give you 2 options. So the first is to do a seated twist. So you come one leg straight out in front of you, the other leg crossed over, so both your sit bones are most definitely grounded. And then you hug towards the bent knee. So seated twist is the first option. The second option is cow face arms, full pose. So you start up on your knees. You bring one foot in front of the other. We then sit back down, and ideally you want one foot on one side of your hips and the other foot, it's a bit difficult when you're all hot and sticky and sweaty, the other foot towards the other hip, so your knees want to be reasonably on top of one another. Then whichever leg is on top, that arm goes up and bends down, and then you take the other hand around and take the bind behind your head. So whether you want to do a seated pose, i.e. seated twist, or whether you want to do cow face pose is entirely up to you. But we will take our 10 deep breaths from now. In both instances, trying to keep the spine really tall with the head balanced on top of that spine. Excellent. Then if you're in cow face pose, gently release the arms and then untangle the legs. If you're in twist, then just twist around in the opposite direction, have a small counter twist, and then we'll move to the other side. So if you're doing a twist, then take the other leg out in front, bring the foot across the knee, and then hug the bent leg, turning towards the bent leg. If you're doing cow face legs, cross the knees so that the knees are on top of one another, sitting down and trying to get the feet towards the hips, and then whichever leg is on top, that's the hand that goes up, and then take the bind with your arms. which you can also do with a scarf or a belt if you're tight in the shoulders. And 10 deep breaths on this side. Allowing the spine to be nice and tall. And then gently releasing off those arms. If you're in a twist, just have a small counter twist to the other side. Untangle the legs if you've been in cow face pose. And then coming sideways onto our mat, keep the feet on the mat and roll yourself all the way back down onto the mat. Get the shoulders comfortable, feet parallel to one another. Take the right leg up towards the ceiling and cross it over the left thigh. Then pressing down through the palms by the side of the body. Really engage the leg muscles and the glutes and lift the hips up towards the ceiling whilst opening the knee out to the side. We're doing a bridge with figure 4 legs. Really squeezing those glutes up, trying to open that knee out to the side. 2 deep breaths here. Then roll the spine back down onto the mat, bone by bone by bone. When the back of the pelvis comes down onto the mat, take the arms out wide into, straight out from the shoulders into like a capital T. And then allow the legs to roll over towards the left until the right foot comes down onto the ground. Stretching the hips away from the torso so that you have a stretch down the right side of the body. Head can stay looking up towards the ceiling, or you can look out over your right shoulder, whatever feels best in your neck. And if you have your head over to one side, bring it back to center. Take a nice big inhale, then on the exhale, roll the hips back down onto the mat. Uncross the legs, taking the right foot back to the mat. Make sure you're nice and straight on the mat, then take the left leg up towards the ceiling. Cross it over the right thigh. And then engaging the leg muscles, engaging the glutes, bringing your palms back down by the sides of your hips. Press the hips up into bridge pose, opening out through the left knee. Really squeezing those glutes up so that you're raising the hips as high as you can in this position. Couple of breaths here. Then take a nice big inhale, and as you exhale, slowly lower the back down, bone by bone by bone by bone, until the lower spine is back on the mat. Take the arms straight out from the shoulders, and then roll the legs over towards the right this time until the left foot comes down to the ground. Stretch the hips away from the torso. And then take your preferred head position, either looking straight up or looking out over the left shoulder, whichever feels more comfortable. If you have your head over to one side, bring it back to center. Take a nice big inhale. And on the exhale, pull the core in and roll your hips back onto the mat. Uncross the feet. Bring both feet back down to the mat. Bring the arms down by the sides and tuck the shoulder blades underneath the body. Moving into final Savasana. If you want to continue with the hip theme, then bring the feet together and let the knees fall out to the side into reclined butterfly. If you want to move into full Savasana, then take the legs out long and let the feet fall open. Make sure the lower back is comfortable, shoulders tucked under the torso, neck is long. Then just bring the awareness back to your breath. Making the breath really even, breathing in for 3 and out for 3. In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. Making the breath really smooth and really even. You're breathing in as strongly on the first count as the third, and you're exhaling as strongly on the first count as you are the third. In, out, in, out, in, out. And let the breath come back to normal. The next few breaths will keep the breath even, will keep the strength of the breath consistent. But this time, in for 3, out for 4. So in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And let the breath come back to normal. Then our last smooth, even breath will be in for 3 and out for 5. Take a couple of breaths to prepare. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. In, out. And allow your breath to come and go as it pleases, relaxing every bone and every muscle and every ligament of your body onto the mat. Enjoying the weight of your body as gravity presses you into the mat. Heavy and relaxed. And gently bringing the awareness back to your body. Maybe rubbing your fingers or toes, rubbing the thumb over each of the fingertips. Maybe taking your head to one side, rolling your head to the other side. Move your body in whatever way it wants to move. And then when you're ready, roll over onto your side and come up to seated. And then we'll have 3 deep breaths to finish. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Thank you for joining me on that this evening. I hope that you enjoyed it.